I grew up poor, and throughout my 20s, I continued to struggle financially, often living paycheck to paycheck and using debt to fill in the gap when that wasn't enough. But now in my early 30s, I'm finally free from living in that financial survival mode. I've been able to double my income. I'm 1 year away from having my $48,000 in debt repaid. I've invested over $10,000 into my FHSA to put towards buying my first property, which I also intend to use as a rental property. And I've also started to build an emergency fund so that once my debt is repaid, I no longer will have to rely on that if and when an unexpected expense comes up. My hope is that by sharing my story with you and the actions that I took in order to change my situation, that you'll be able to do the same. So, first and foremost, I think the most important thing that I did in order to create this shift was improving my financial literacy because there was so much that I didn't know about money and how it works that kept me stuck in this financial survival mode. So, as I share the 5 things that helped me, I'm going to also try to give you book recommendations and other resources to help you start your financial literacy journey if you haven't already. So, to start with, a key area that I knew nothing about was investing. And investing is something that helped me get out of financial survival mode because it started putting my money to work for me and it started helping me to grow my money without having to put in any additional work. But in the beginning, I had no clue as to how the stock market worked. I used to think you had to have hundreds of dollars in order to invest, especially looking at popular stocks like Apple or Amazon or whatever. Like they're worth hundreds of dollars. But I didn't know about things like fractional shares where you don't have to put in that whole amount of money in order to buy it. You could just buy like a piece of it to get started and like slowly buy a whole share over time. I also didn't know that you don't need a stockbroker in order to buy stocks. And before I really learned about investing, I used to think that it was this incredibly complex and risky thing. But once I actually took the time to learn about it, I realized that even though there is risk involved in investing, there are several strategies that anyone can follow in order to help mitigate that risk, which includes things like diversification. There's also dollar cost averaging, so investing the same amount of money on a set schedule, whether that's like investing $100 a month or $20 a week or whatever it is, so that you're not trying to time the market. The other thing is setting an asset allocation based on your unique risk tolerance. So once I learned those things, those were things that I started to implement into my own investing to help me get my foot in the door and start building a foundation. When I was beginning this journey of learning about investing, there was a few books that I read that really helped me. The big one I think would be Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's a really popular book. It's super easy to read. Another one that I read was The Richest Man in Babylon, which is it's a very short book and it lays out a lot of core principles that help you to build wealth. And the third book that I read that really helped me specifically with like stock market investing is Money Master the Game. This is the one that really laid out things like dollar cost averaging and diversification and like coming up with an asset allocation. Basically, this book was written based on interviews that Tony Robbins did with a bunch of the top investors and just asking them what sort of principles they would pass on to their kids if they weren't able to like pass on their money directly. What principles would they want to pass on to their children in order to allow them to amass their own wealth? Aside from the books, another thing that I did was I bought a online financial literacy course. The course that I took is called Enriched Academy. It is based on the Canadian financial system since I'm Canadian. So that was really helpful because a lot of things do vary country to country. So if you're in a different country, it's really helpful, I think, to have financial literacy courses that are based on your specific geography because it does change a little bit from place to place. But basically, that course, it also walked me through things like investing in the stock market, but also investing in real estate, things like budgeting. It broke down things like the different tax advantage accounts and things like that. So it gave me like a really good broad understanding of how the Canadian financial system works. So after having read these books and having taken this financial literacy course, I started investing in the stock market. But to begin with, I started off with a robo advisor where basically I just kind of inputted my risk tolerance and the time horizon or how long I planned on having that money invested for. And then it bought stocks for me based on those two things. But after a while, I became a bit more confident and I started investing a little bit on my own. In the beginning, I just did like $20 here and there kind of thing. And then as I gained a bit more confidence and gained more experience, I started to invest more and more. And I'll put up a little shot of my investments right now. So, as you can see, I have $20,000 invested right now, and $4,000 of that is money that I didn't have to work for. It's money that my money earned for me. And if you're Canadian and you're looking for an investing platform, one that I recommend and one that I'm using here is Wealthsimple. I really love it because it's super easy to use and they offer fractional shares. So you can invest for as little as $1 if you wanted to buy Apple, but again, you can't afford to buy an entire share or you just don't want to risk that much money on a particular stock. You can buy simply $1 worth of a share and buy more as you feel more comfortable or as you have more funds coming in. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check them out. There are other platforms that you can use, but this is just the one that I personally prefer. I also do all of my banking with them because they offer a higher interest rate. So I believe it's at 1.75% that I have right now. I do have a little bit of a boost in my interest rate because I have direct deposit set up with them, but it's nice to have. I think it's like $4.50 a month in interest, which isn't like a lot, obviously, but it does add up over time. And it's better than the 0.01% that most of the major banks give you. The third thing that really helped me get out of financial survival mode is doubling my income. This is something that I really wanted to make sure I didn't put right at the beginning of this video because I really do believe having an understanding of money and how it works and having that financial literacy and also having an understanding of how investing works and actually taking the time to set up your investing system first are both more important than simply making more money. Because I know personally, if I hadn't taken the time to first understand those two things, then when I went from making 30,000 a year to 60,000 a year, I wouldn't have actually been in a better position because I would have simply just been spending that extra $30,000 instead of being productive with it. I do have a video where I explained how I doubled my income in 6 months. If you want to check out that more in depth video, I'll link that in the description. But to give you a quick summary of how I did this, basically, when I started out, I was trying to double my income using side hustles. I went through 9 in total, with a little bit of success here and there. Then I finally decided to focus on growing my income from my current job instead of trying to start something new from scratch. So, the first thing that I did was I researched what my potential options would be, what type of jobs could I get within my current sort of skill set and experience that would double my income, which in my case, that was horticultural technician jobs and head grower jobs because I had worked in a greenhouse. Once I knew that those were the two sort of job titles that I was looking for, I went on Indeed and started looking up those positions, not to apply for, but just to see what sort of qualifications they were looking for. So I could identify the gap between where I was and where I needed to be in order to actually get hired for those jobs. Once I knew what I needed to improve upon, I started working on filling that gap. I took a course at my local community center. I took every opportunity that I could at my current job in order to learn new skills. And I tried to find other ways that I could make my resume stand out. Once I had worked on filling in the gap there, I started actually applying for jobs. And a key factor, I think, in my success is that I didn't disqualify myself from job opportunities where I didn't perfectly meet the requirements. I left it up to the potential employer to disqualify me. And I say this because the job that I ended up getting that doubled my income was one where I didn't perfectly meet the qualifications. And then the fifth thing that I did was I leveraged my connections. So the job that I ended up getting, I actually found it through a friend of a friend, and I was able to connect with the person hiring before the job was even posted, which gave me a huge advantage. So, if you're looking to double your income or at the very least to increase your income, those are some things that I would recommend considering when trying to do so. The fourth thing that really helped me get out of financial scarcity was getting control of my debt. When I graduated college, I was $48,000 in debt, and a lot of the times I was struggling just to make that minimum payment. A big part of getting my debt under control was asking for help, which I did by reaching out to a credit counselor, which was free. I did it through a nonprofit organization. I personally went with the Credit Counseling Society of Canada. There are other ones available too. And again, if you're in a different country, make sure you're looking for credit counselors specifically within your country if that's something that you're interested in. I personally didn't do a whole lot of research before I went with this organization, but I knew my mom had used them in the past and had a good experience, so that's why I chose them. But it was a really simple process. It was about a 20-minute conversation over the phone, and we just went over my finances, what what I was earning at the time, what my expenses were, what the interest rates were on my debt, and things like that. And then we talked about the options that were available to me. And for me, it was recommended to go with a debt repayment program. So, with that, they negotiated with my creditors for me, and they got them to agree to 0% interest. So, I no longer had to pay any interest on my debt, which was a huge help because before it could have taken me 15 to 20 years in order to pay down my debt, and it would have cost me thousands of dollars in interest. So just making that one phone call saved me years, potentially 2 decades, and also thousands of dollars. And it has been such a huge help in getting my finances under control. So, again, if you feel like you're drowning in debt and you don't know what to do and you feel like there's no way out, I would highly encourage you to look into credit counseling and to just see what your options are because everyone's situation is going to be unique and different. But when you know what your options are, it can allow you to make better decisions, and in the long run, it could save you years of stressing about your debt and you could save thousands of dollars. The fifth thing that helped me get out of financial survival mode was creating an emergency fund. Or right now, I have about $1,600 saved, and it's been a really big help because it gives me a bit of peace of mind if and when things come up unexpectedly, whether that's, something with my car or an unexpected vet bill. Having that money there really makes those unexpected inconveniences in life a lot less stressful. And on top of that, it also makes it so I don't have to lean on debt in an emergency because I have a backup plan in place already. Even if it's not much, even if it's just, 10, 20, $30 here and there that you're able to put in, over time it can make a big difference. Because even if you only have a couple $100 in your emergency fund and then something happens and it completely wipes it out, having it there in that moment when you need it can make a bad situation less stressful. And in my opinion, having that peace of mind is really helpful and it's worth it. The sixth thing that helped me get out of financial survival mode was becoming comfortable with discomfort. Or to put it another way, I started consciously choosing my discomfort. So, for an example, when I doubled my income, the new job that I got was in another city. And when I went to move, I could have at that point lived on my own and had my own apartment, which is something that I really wanted for a long time. But if I had done that, I would have greatly increased my expenses and I really wouldn't have had as much money left over in order to invest and work on my financial goals. So instead, what I did is I actually moved in with one of my friend's moms, who is an elderly woman who had recently lost her husband and was living alone. And she wasn't loving it, and her kids were worried about her being on her own. And she actually lives 10 minutes away from my new job. So I ended up moving in with her, and I pay $500 a month for rent instead of having to pay like $1,500 a month for rent. So that really gave me a lot of freedom to invest heavily and to really work aggressively towards my future goals, even though this isn't the most comfortable situation. I mean, I live in a basement and I don't have a kitchen right now. So it can be a bit challenging at times. I mean, I don't know if you can see it in the background, but I have a mini fridge and that's in my living room. And then I have like a deep freeze and I have a hot plate and an air fryer and a crock pot and things like that. And I'm able to make it work, but it's obviously not my dream situation. And on top of that, as someone in my 30s, I mean, if you know, you know, like a lot of people will give you crap for living with somebody, living with your parents, living with a roommate when you're still in your 30s. But I would rather deal with people talking shit now and having a better financial future than spending $1,500 on an apartment just so people think that I'm being successful. Another uncomfortable thing that I choose on a regular basis is saying no to experiences and things with friends that don't align with my goals or just simply don't feel worth it to me. Like, I have a friend who is really into going to concerts and seeing tribute bands and things like that right now. And she's constantly inviting me to these things. But 9 times out of 10, I say no because it's just not worth it to me. And I know she's gonna like give me an eye roll or call me lame or boring or whatever, but I'd rather be lame and boring than poor for the rest of my life. So, those are the 6 things that have helped me to get out of financial survival mode. And to do a quick recap, those 6 things are becoming financially literate, having my money work for me, doubling my income, getting help with my debt, building an emergency fund, and choosing my discomfort. If you liked this video and would like to see more like it, don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments, what are some things that you have done that have helped you get out of financial survival mode? And I'll see you in the next one.